Now let's talk about how you can figure out what your value is. So here I'm going to give you like a step-by-step process, and you can copy this or use part of this, whatever works for you. But step one is to stop and think about, okay, what is the product, service, or service that I sell? You could also build your value off of an individual feature of a product. Maybe you sell a product and it has a feature that's very compelling, and the feature is something you don't sell individually. Like, you don't have a line item or a purchase price for that feature, but maybe you have a very attractive feature, and you could use you could build off this process off an individual feature. But through this demonstration, I'm going to use sort of like an inventory management software product. It's just a fictional product that I kind of thought of, so hopefully you can follow along. But product or feature one is auto inventory replenishment, and step two is to kind of think about what does that product do, or what does that feature do. And so the function of auto inventory replenishment is that it automatically submits orders to vendors based on inventory levels. Okay, so just want to point out, so far we're not talking any value. We're only talking product details up until this point. But step three is, okay, now let's look at those two details and think about how does that help our buyer or our customer or a business from a technical perspective. Well, if they're able to automatically submit orders, meaning not manually submit orders, then that decreases the amount of time ordering. Let me give you an example. When I was in high school, I worked at a grocery store, and I remember watching managers walk around with like a keypad thing in their hand, walking up and down the aisles, ordering. Right? It would take a lot of time. So imagine that you can sell something that prevents that human from having to do that process. Maybe the system uses the data that goes through the cash register to process orders. I mean, I don't have experience with any of this, so I don't think I'm like talking about all the stuff I have knowledge about and it's foreign to you. I'm just making this all up, so hopefully you can follow along. But my point is that instead of having someone walk up and down an aisle, it's automated. So that from a technical perspective, our company and our people can spend less time ordering, right? Well, so step four is, okay, now we have that technical benefit. What does that mean to us from a business perspective? Well, if we don't have to have someone walk up and down the aisles of the grocery store, well, then we don't have to pay that person to do that. So we either can do more with less people, or do something different with that person. But at the end of the day, we can decrease our staff and labor costs. So that's a business benefit. All right. Well, step five is, how does either of those two benefits we came up with so far help from a personal perspective? So let's say that we're selling to the CFO of the grocery store. Well, actually, with this benefit here, we're selling to the store manager, who is the person who walks up and down the aisle, right? And so the benefit to him or her is we can help to improve their work-life balance, because they can get home earlier, because they're not instead of walking up and down an aisle, they're sitting at a kitchen table with their family having dinner, right? So we're improving their work-life balance. So that's a step-by-step process that we started with the product, and we ended up with 3 value points, okay? And so then from there we can kind of continue for additional products or services or features that we have. And so I've done the same thing. I won't go through each of these, but we have predictive demand forecasting, we have a management dashboard, and each of those features has a different yet similar benefits. So we have a bunch of value there, right? So some really good information, a lot of good stuff that we can use for our messaging, for our sales pitch. We could use that for our website, all sorts of different stuff. But one last step here, and this is optional. In some ways, we might have too much information there to kind of really build a laser tight, focused value proposition. So a last step here is, and this is just I added here at the bottom, but the last step is to summarize all of those columns and those individual points to come up with more of like summary points. It's optional, and there's no that last step is more art than science, because it's kind of hard, to look at three different things and to make it into one. Sometimes you might look at the three and say, well, one of them is just better than the others, and I'll just use that. So you might look at the more dominant one, or there might be a way to kind of put a bow around all three and come up with a new point that summarizes all three. But anyway, so at the bottom row here are like is the summary, and you could call that like your core value or the summary of your value. But anyways, so that's a process that you can use. You could copy this table and do that on your own. What I want to give you now are some questions that you could use to brainstorm. So coming up with stuff to put in those boxes on your own, you may have trouble, right? You might not really know what type of improvement you help to make. So here are 3 pages of questions. I won't read each of these to you. You can download these slides. But these slides and the video will be posted on our website, and you'll get a link to it for after this webinar. But I'm sorry, in a day after this webinar, 24 hours after the webinar, you'll get a link. But these questions help you to brainstorm and think about improvements you help to make. You basically insert your product name or whatever, your feature or whatever, and if your answer to one of these questions is yes, then start to kind of think about and compose how. So it's sort of like, does your product help to improve any processes? If your answer is yes, then how, or what processes? So these are just to kind of guide you to start to brainstorm and organize and identify the different ways that you help. So here are some technical questions. Here are some business questions. Do you help to increase revenue, visibility, decision making, risk, customer satisfaction? Here are some personal questions: personal income, decrease stress, improve work-life balance, improve recognition. Think about improve recognition. If your buyer purchases your product, are you going to help them to get more attention inside their organization and work their way up the ladder? I mean, that's a pretty good selling point.